Good morning, folks. It's Javier here coming to you live. Um, so, I wanted to do a brief talk, and I know I'm not sure if I'm in the right place to do it, but I'm kind of out right now. But I wanted to do a brief talk on the shooting in Minneapolis. First of all, what happened in Minneapolis was sad and heartbreaking. It's always heartbreaking when a school shooting happens. It's always heartbreaking when kids have to die. But I want to do a really you already know me, how real I am with you guys about everything that I believe and everything. I am an independent. I hold independent views. Now, that being said, I would like to address this shooter, this person that committed this horrific act. And obviously, as we know, right-wing media is throwing a frenzy about this person being transgender, where the left is meanwhile, the left, on the other hand, is trying to dodge this topic altogether and blame the guns and all that. So, I want to say one thing, and I want to just kind of say this I want to say one thing and say it very clearly. Um, this guy that committed the shooting, he was demon possessed. I believe that with all my heart. And I think there's one thing that, like, the people on the right are getting correct. I'm not demonizing this person because he was transgender. However, I do believe this particular person was demon possessed. I had to actually, credits to some right-wing media sources, which actually, said the quiet part out loud, that this guy, this trans guy that committed this horrendous act, was actually, he was writing in his journal while he was always like staring at himself in the mirror, and then like he was starting to say like I don't want to be trans anymore. I don't want to be trans anymore. And then he's like, when will this end? And then the demon looks back at him and he's like, go kill yourself. Kill yourself. Kill yourself. And he was actually in his notebook, in his diary or sketcher or whatever, his sketch pad, whatever. He was actually drawing pictures of this demon that was actually like telling him to go kill himself and to do this horrendous act. So, the question by and large is this particular circumstance with this shooter, and in my opinion, with all shooters, this is actually a spiritual thing, in my opinion, because this person, he was drawing pictures of this demon that was telling him to go kill himself. And while he was complaining about being trans, saying I should have never fooled myself into being trans and all that. But the whole point of the matter is, I agree with on this particular circumstance. I have to say that this guy was possessed. This guy was demon possessed, and his sketchpad drawings, tell that truth. His sketchpad drawings, about him staring at himself in the mirror and this demon telling him to kill himself. This Minneapolis shooter was possessed. I don't know if it had anything to do with him being transgender or not, but I know we need to find him. What I'm trying to say is, without going on a word salad, is that we need to find a middle ground here. The left wants to dodge this topic altogether and blame guns. The right wants to blame this entirely on him being transgender. The middle ground here that I've come to the conclusion to is that whatever this guy was going through was a spiritual thing. It was a spiritual thing, and there was demonic possession involved, and I stand fully by that. But what I'm trying to get to is, like, the reality of the matter is, and I'm just going to go ahead and say this, we have had a number of transgender shooters already, and I'm not blaming transgenderism. I condemn hate and attacks on the trans community. I condemn hate and attacks on the trans community being perpetrated by the right. I condemn that. But at the same time, I want to acknowledge the reality that we have had already a number of transgender shooters, a recent one being in Nashville. And we have to ask ourselves the question, what is with this trend? And we have to ask ourselves an honest question, an honest and real question. What is with this trend of transgender shooters that have been happening? Yes, it is true that the majority of shooters, and I see that, on left-wing sites, on Democratic sites, on liberal sites, yes, it is true. The majority of shooters have been straight white men, or whatever, white men. But at the same time, you know, we have to recognize that that is the majority of the population. That's the vast majority of the population. Trans people are a very, very, very scarce minority. So why is it that this very, very, very scarce minority have been coming up like the last like have been coming up as shooters, kind of over like there's been a trend of this, a trend of the even though they're a very scarce minority of them, there have been a trend of transgender shooters, and I think it is fair and reasonable, while at the same time condemning all attacks and hate. I think it is fair and reasonable, very fair and reasonable, to ask the question why. Why have there been a trend of transgender shooters? I want to know. I'm curious myself. This being said, any hate and attacks against the trans community is right to be condemned. It needs to be condemned. It has to be condemned. But it is a fair question to pose. Why have there been a trend of transgender shooters lately? Very heartbreaking what happened in Minneapolis. Very depressing. My prayers are with those families. And that'll be all. Just a very quick talk. Thank you guys for watching. Take care. This is Javier Blog 208. Javier tuning out.